Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go.
On today's show, we have another amazing musician, and he's got some other stories to tell about the beer world and just kind of coming up locally, playing at New World Brewery. He's got several acts that he's involved in. There's the Path of Increased Indifference, which I love that title, but I wanted to make sure that I stuck the landing in saying it. And then he also does stuff solo, and I believe you've been involved in a number of other bands, either in production or other things like that. Is that true?
I've played a little bit. I haven't really played in a lot of bands in Tampa since I moved here.
How long have you been here?
About 20 years. I moved here in like 99.
Okay, where'd you come from?
Maine.
Maine?
Mm.
You're my first Maine dude.
All right.
I get tons of North New York people. I get tons of Syracuse, Rochester. So Maine, I don't know if I've ever met anybody born in Maine before. Tell me about Maine.
Oh, you can't get there from here, buddy.
Big family, small family?
Really big family.
Yeah. What is Ogden? Is that what nationality is that? What
I don't really know exactly. That's my stepdad's family name, and I think it's I looked up like online, just being a kid, being curious. I think it means like oak dwelling. It's some kind of European something.
Oak dwelling. That kind of works out in the whole imbibement world, you know, kind of like a whiskey type of situation.
I think so. I like it.
Yeah. All right. And brothers, sisters, how many?
I have two sisters from my mom's side of the family and two brothers from my dad's side of the family. Okay.
And are you guys close?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with my sisters.
Right.
And I'm kind of I don't know.
Were they older or younger?
Both of my sisters are younger than me. My brother, my stepbrother really, but he's about a month or 2 months older than me.
I feel like, and this is probably horrible for several reasons, the dream is to have older sisters and younger brothers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you in Maine? Until what age?
I lived in Maine until I think I came to Tampa the first time when I was 18.
What was in Tampa? What brought you here that first time?
My natural father is from Tampa.
Okay. What's his name?
Andy Carpe.
Okay. What's Carpe?
Russian.
Okay. All right, I can see that. I can see you got a look about you. All right. Now Maine, is it what cold most of the year? Half and half, 4 seasons. What?
I mean, you use words like hot and cold, and it's kind of like subjective, right? Like, so growing up, I thought that 50 degrees, 45 to 50 degrees was kind of ideal.
Right.
Like at 45, I would start wearing shorts. Like at 40, I was already thinking about it, you know, kind of.
That's funny.
I mean, my blood's thinned out a little bit or a lot by now.
As a kid, were you into music or were you into sports, or what was your thing as a kid?
Yeah, I played sports because they wanted me to play sports. I wasn't really any good at any sports. I loved music. I don't know. I went through when I was a kid, like I would sing songs, make songs up to myself. But I didn't really like most of the music that I heard. Right. Until I discovered like in the early 90s, I started discovering like hardcore and hardcore punk and metal and like, all this shit from the 80s that was going on.
Right. Yeah. Can you remember some of those first punk hardcore bands that you were listening to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're taught like really, God, like a lot of Boston hardcore really is like a lot of Boston hardcore is what really, really drew me in. And I have to kind of correct myself a little bit because really the Jackson 5, that cartoon they had back in the day. I mean,
with
that
the
was
mouse? Didn't Michael Jackson have a little friend that was a mouse?
Yeah.
I remember that show.
I mean, like I don't know anybody that doesn't love the Jackson 5. I mean,
Michael Jackson's a tough one for me because I'm guessing we're about the same age. I'm around 45. How old are you?
I'll be 44 in January.
Yeah, so we're right about the same age. And I mean, the big four kind of were Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, and like Bruce Springsteen. I feel like they were ubiquitous on MTV. They were always around, and like Michael Jackson songs these days are like Christmas carols. Like almost all of them, when they come on, you know the words to them and can whatever. Such an amazing voice and all this other stuff. But then late stage Michael Jackson just takes a huge shit on your whole recollection. And this is something that I've had this conversation with people about Woody Allen, about Michael Jackson, about I don't know if you're or a fan of Ryan Adams at all, but he's a pretty prolific kind of Americana folk alt country guy, and he's gotten into trouble with people lately. And separating the work from the artist, I always kind of have an ebb and flow on what I think about that. One argument that often pops into my head is most of my heroes probably have Facebook and Twitter and cell phones were around back then. They would be going through all the same trauma that all these other people were. They were just lucky enough to kind of age out of it before social media came about. So Michael Jackson, Boston hardcore, and that's where your sound was born.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, going to Boy Scouts, like the Boy Scouts leaders would listen to a lot of like, classic rock or like Sabbath and Zeppelin and all that shit. And I kind of, I was into it.
When did you pick up an instrument?
I didn't pick up an instrument until I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And that was like, then it was like kind of on, like, then it was like, it's not just something that I like. It was like, I require this in my life.
Was that a guitar?
Yeah.
What was it? Do you remember?
It was like, I think it was a Samick.
Okay.
It was a really cheap guitar. I wanted to buy, saved up money. I was like looking at them. I really wanted to buy a left-hand guitar. Like,
are you a lefty?
My whole life, everything that I wanted to do, like I would try to do it left-handed, and some adult would tell me like, "Don't use that hand. You got to use the other hand." And it's really, it was like all the way up. And so finally, I'm going to the music store by myself, and I was like, "I want that one." He's like, "Are you left-handed?" And like that's how it always starts. It's like, "Well, what hand do you eat with? What hand do you?" I'm like, "Dude, just." And so I explained the whole thing to him, and he was like, "If you've picked up everything else right-handed, just buy a right-handed guitar. Just trust me. Like left-handed guitars are more expensive because they're left-handed guitars."
Are they more expensive?
Like $100, $200 or something. I don't know. I took his advice and I bought a right-handed guitar. I just bought a cheap, shitty Samick. It was, it was
so
all right.
How do you play today? Do you play left-handed or right-handed?
No, I play right-handed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But do you think you're ambidextrous, or at least at that time, did you think you were?
No, so I learn new tasks as easily left-handed as I do right-handed.
That's interesting.
So like chopsticks, I'm as good left-handed as I am right-handed because I switch back and forth depending on like
That's
table
crazy.
etiquette or,
That's interesting. I've never heard that or seen that before. I had John Nowicki in here, and watching him play guitar was a mind bender because he plays a right-handed guitar upside down, but he doesn't change the strings around. So he's playing all of his chords inverted. Well, I mean, inverted.
It looks that way.
Well, yeah. And I was like, "Is that tough for you?" And he said, "Well, I don't know any other way. That's just how I learned to play guitar." Yeah. But I'm watching him hold these. I was like, "Oh, that would just kill me. My hand would freeze up within seconds." So I'm trying to go through my head, think of Boston hardcore bands. I'm thinking of like Slapshot and SSD or who are some of the other big ones?
Like Tree, Sam Black Church, Stompbox. You've got like 6L6, like so many fucking awesome bands.
How far was Boston? Like is that close enough by that you can go into town and see shows? Or
from where I lived, it was probably a solid, I don't know, 5 or 6 hour ride.
That's tough.
I didn't go to Boston very often, but a lot of the like Sam Black Church, Tree would come up to Maine all the time. Like they would drive up there, they'd stop into Portland, and then they'd come up. I lived in Bangor, and we had this hardcore club outside of town called the Penny Post. It eventually turned into Heavies, and it was just this all ages club in the middle of nowhere. And it's what we did. Like, when I first started going there, I had to sneak out of my house. I would sneak out. I had oil the hinge and the bulkhead door out back, and so I could like sneak out and push my car out to the end of the driveway and crank it out in the street and like.
So, what were some of the early bands that you were in?
I played in a band called Green Sand. I played in a band in the 90s in Portland called the Chillbillies.
Okay.
We were like all over the place.
In Portland. How long were you in Portland?
Like 3 years maybe.
How is Portland?
I love that town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some friends there, and I've always wanted to go, but never made it over that way. But it seems like it would be right up my alley.
It's so like, I mean, I lived there in the late 90s. It's such a young town.
Sure.
You know, it's like everybody's, you know, it's very like very progressive, very like, I don't know. And that's like coastal New England
Sure.
anyway, right? But I mean, you know, it's like, you know, racism or homophobia or like, you know, transphobia or like any of that. It's just not really like in Portland. That's not really a thing. I mean, it's not, I won't say it's not a thing, but it's not the predominant
You have to really
thing.
search it out. Yeah.
It's not the predominant thing. And if somebody is going to be a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or something, they're going to get called out. Like,
I've been to San Francisco several times, and every time I go there, I'm like, this is like Disneyland or something. Like everybody's cool and low key, and I agree with. And I'm like, I start to feel uncomfortable. I was like, I don't have anybody to rail against here. Like everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
So how come only a couple of years in Portland?
It's a relationship. There was a relationship thing, and I kind of like it was. I had to. I kept falling back into this relationship that was actually a really, really healthy relationship. Probably one of the healthier relationships that I've been in my life, except for she was a heroin addict. And, it was just a difficult, and I ended up
tough one to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, I'm just going to go farther than down the road. I'm going to go like
all the way
down the
road.
Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. The heroin just had a real rough go of it up there. I mean, you know, that was a big deal in the late 80s, early 90s. You know, all those acts that were there. You're fine. I mean, this is you're good. Who's the guy? Was it Mother Love Bone that died? And
oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, that was kind of a bad deal there. So you said you went all the way down the coast. Are we talking California or all the way to the other side of the country?
No, just down the East Coast.
Okay.
Came back down to Tampa.
Okay.
I had decided, I was like, you know, there's a bunch of people in Tampa that I had met from visiting that, you know, I really dig, that I haven't really gotten a chance to get to know very well. Let me just take the ride down.
And so what year was this again?
That was like 99.
Okay. So you've been here for about 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you came down, did you play music down here right away, or did that take a little bit of time to get into?
I did. I played a little bit. I was still going to church at the time, so I played like with the church. And
what type of church was it?
Like a non-denominational Christian.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a great thing about religion is the music. I mean, there's a lot of great music roots in religion. Yeah. Southern, you know, Bible Belt and a lot of this other stuff. I mean, I can take or leave a lot of it, but the music's always, you know, pretty amazing in some of these churches. But you said you left the church.
Yeah.
Did something happen specifically, or just kind of aged out of it, or?
I kept studying and kind of leaning into this crisis of faith is just a crisis of faith, and that's like what I kept trying to study. The more I studied, the less I believed in any of that shit until I was just like, this is like I can't buy it. Like, I just can't buy it.
Right.
So theological seminary is what happened, really, like studying it to that point. And I'm just like, it's not for me.
Now, were you writing music at that time too?
Yeah, I've been writing music since I was a teenager.
So is there a losing your faith period of your music, like where you can hear it in the lyrics or that sort of thing, or?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I think if anything, like I'm maybe really thinking back, like there's really, I think the losing my faith, I think maybe so. And I didn't realize it, but that was all like when I was still going to church. Like, I think if I think back on some of these songs, there was that, like when I was still trying to believe. Like,
it's definitely a paradigm shift. You know, I was raised in Catholic school. You know, my parents were Catholic, and I went to mass and all this other stuff. But around the early 2000s, around the time I was in law school, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. And it's funny because a lot of times when stuff like that happens, it drives people to religion. Mm-hmm. But in some weird way, shape, or form, it drove me away from, and never really gone back. I mean, my daughter goes to school and all that, Catholic school, but it's liberating and it's also terrifying, because
to a degree.
Because at one point it's like there's no one out there, there's no code or whatever, it's kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that's also true, and so you can kind of go either way with that.
Yeah, for me, it was like the prayer aspect, right? Like if it's been a tough day and like some shit that I don't really like, I don't have a therapist or like it's like I don't want to tell like my partner or you don't want to put like some kind of maybe there's some kind of thing that you're not at liberty to speak with other people about, like
right.
It's not your story to tell, but it's weighs heavy, like who do you. And so I started this practice where I started to I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start doing it again, but I'm just gonna pray to me. Like I'm just gonna,
I think that's
like in my head or out loud or whatever, just in the shower, like think about my thoughts, like think through my stuff, or like kind of.
Well, 100%. I mean, I'm a big fan of therapy, and oftentimes the solution to my problems doesn't come from the therapist saying, "Hey, this,
Right.
that, or the other." It's me like
hearing
myself say it, and I'm like, "Wait a second. Oh, okay." And so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a different form of meditation.
Exactly.
Some people have a mantra, some people get quiet, some people hum, and you can just talk it out with yourself. I think that makes perfect sense. So, Path of Increased Indifference. How did the seed for that get planted? When did that come about?
So Joel and Brendan had this 2-piece band, and they were awesome. So Brendan plays guitar through a guitar amp and through a bass amp, and he's got this amazing tone.
Yeah.
With all that, and Joel lays into the drums, and that's what they were, is a badass 2-piece hardcore band, like kind of math noise.
I dig it so much. I was listening to it, and it's funny. Some of the songs that I was listening to, I always use Dillinger Escape Plan as a point of reference, but who's singing on it?
That's me.
That's you. It sounded like Lee Ving from Fear. That was the vocals that I heard. I was like, this is badass.
I'm always interested to hear what it is that people hear. Like, I have no idea. I can tell you who I'm influenced by, but I know that I don't sound like any of them.
Who are you influenced by besides Michael Jackson and?
Vocally, a lot of like Jet Crandall from Sam Black Church, and like kind of maybe a little bit of like Jonah Jenkins from Only Living Witness. But I don't think I sound like either of them. I think I respect both of them too much to even, like, if I catch myself, I would like back up. Like,
there's even a little bit of like Matt Pike from High on Fire, and even some Lemmy, Lemmy in there too.
I love all that, and I probably am influenced by a lot of things that I don't realize that more shape what I sound like, but I just don't really like think about it.
Now, have you guys recorded full lengths? It seemed like there was one full length that I saw, and then a number of EPs. Does that sound right? Or
yes, yeah. So we did. What was that? 2018. We did 8 songs. It was like a 22 and a half minute.
Okay.
Then 2019, we just banged out like 3 songs real quick. Probably the next time, I would imagine, will be more of a full, like this whole year has been nothing.
A lost year, yeah.
Not a lost year though. I mean, we started practicing again in like, I don't know, August or so. But we were still zooming, but between each other, and I'm sure Brendan kept writing. We kind of picked up where, like, I had some recordings. I would practice vocals on some stuff. I don't know if Joel was tapping things out or just listening to it, working it out in his head.
Right.
Like we were still talking with each other and keeping it in the front of our mind.
Right.
So we've been practicing since August again, and kind of tightening these up, and it'll probably be more of a full length. The first bunch of stuff, like, we recorded, I don't know how many, 8 or 10 songs in the brewery at Tampa Bay Brewing Company.
That's awesome.
We just went in there and brought Joel's recording equipment in there, and pretty much released them like sort of 2 at a time on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Just each as individual tracks, but just as he got the mix, like, okay, here's 2, until they were out there.
Badass stuff. I really enjoyed it. You sent it to me this week. It was last night, or I think it was last night, and I got the chance to listen to it today, and I was really caught off guard, because when you listen to local music, there's very much a spectrum of what you can expect between someone, kind of is just figuring out recording for the first time, or someone's like, really on top of it. And your guys' sound is killer. Another one that I wasn't too aware of until we recently was Meat Wound. And
oh, dude, I love those dudes.
Oh, so good. And Horsewhip, and Elliot from Wreath and Vacancy, and
that was the first episode of your podcast I listened to.
Yeah. So there's a really good scene here locally. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, and this is what one of the definite upsides to COVID is, and I've mentioned it before, but I think because national acts are not going to be able to tour as much for years, that if you're going to want to go see live music, it's going to be local bands that aren't having to arrange big tours to come and play your town. So I feel like now is a time for local bands to really kind of get in the headspace of people more so than they ever did, because everybody's dying to go to shows right now, especially like heavier shows.
I hope so. I mean, I hope that it really works out like that. Like, of course, I mean, I would love to see the national touring.
Well, for sure, but
we all want that. But
we're not worried about them. They got.
Well, I mean,
we are, but we're not. Well, yeah. I agree. I of course agree with what you're saying, but if I'm rooting for the little guy, the local guy, that's.
Oh no, I'm about it, and I hope that, like, I would love to see the kind of scene that I experienced as a teenager, and I don't know what it was like around here because I wasn't here. I've heard that it was awesome in terms of, like, all kinds of shows, and I imagine there were a lot of Tampa bands playing and all this. Like well, I
mean, you had the death metal scene over in Clearwater, St. Pete, Tampa Bay, the Morrisound deal. There's definitely a few punk bands from St. Pete growing up that I remember. Tampa just had a lot of amazing shows. Like, everybody that comes in here and tells me about, like, Iggy Pop at Tampa Theater and Bad Brains at the Cuban Club and Black Flag at the Cuban Club and all these other things. I'm like, oh my God, any one of those would have been, the end all be all. So, but from a local perspective, the great thing about this podcast is getting to meet a lot of these people. It's introduced me to so much amazing music that I just had and I'm a music guy. Like, I really am into music, but for some reason there's like this barrier with local acts. I don't know what it was, at least with me. And until kind of I got into this, I wasn't really aware of it, but now I'm just loving it.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I didn't, I got married pretty quickly after I moved to Tampa originally, and I was just kind of like doing that, like, go to work, go home, like doing the family life. I had no idea like what was going on until after I got divorced and found like all of this, time to do, like, what I'm like, whoa, there's a whole ass scene here. Like, there's stuff
for sure
happening.
Do you have kids?
Like, I do.
Okay. How old?
They're 11 and 15.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Mine are 2 and 6. So
my daughter just recorded her first.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I took her into Atomic Audio and recorded with Frank, who did our last 2 recording sessions over there. He captured her in her uke.
Very cool.
I'm super, super proud of her. Yeah.
Oh, I would be too. Can only imagine my daughter singing and playing the ukulele. It would
and like just like working out her problems, like, you know what it's like, being a teenager. It's like, we've all been there.
Right.
It's everything weighs heavily on you when you're a teenager. Well, her 15, it's like, oh, there's a global pandemic. And by the way, we live in Florida, and Florida is like, nope, I don't believe in it. We're not doing it. We're not, like, we're going to la.
Right. And they live here locally?
They do.
Yeah.
So she's working her stuff out, like, in song, just like you got a feeling, like, write a song.
Right. Now you're also, or at least were there, I saw the one show you sent me from New World Brewery doing some solo stuff.
Yeah, I did. I played a couple of some friends of mine, David Waterman and Charlie Doan, put together this thing called the Love Doctors Presents, and it's like a variety show for what's the February 14 day Valentine.
Oh, okay.
It's like kind of like a Valentine variety show. It can be like everybody just does. It might be comedy, or it might be like it's just all of this. It could, yeah. So I've done that a few times.
I love the David Carradine song.
Thanks. Yeah, it was like the little song about like
it's about choking yourself
autoerotic
out.
asasphyxiation. What says
better for Valentine's Day than
exactly.
That's hilarious. So did you guys tour much before COVID? Were you guys?
No, I've never been on tour. I would love to. We were just starting to get some shows like through Pete at Indoxa.
Right.
With some of these touring bands that are coming through, which was pretty awesome. I've never been on tour. I'd like to, at some point, maybe that's kind of I'd like to retire one day and like lose all my money.
Yeah.
Just
traveling around and playing.
Yeah.
That would be pretty awesome. So when you came in, you noticed the bottles from Cigar City that they did with Brian Schaefer for their anniversary. How long have you been working in that world?
Beer. I started brewing beer professionally in 2005.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I mean, it's really becoming quite a scene here. I went about a year or two ago to Asheville, and I've been to Asheville a couple times in my life, but I didn't realize until this last trip that it's like friggin' Napa Valley up in Asheville, and it's really, taking off down here. We moved into this building in 2017, and I started to see all these places popping up, and now with the tours and everything else, it's rad. It's exciting. I'm hoping it continues to grow. Was Cigar City the first place that you started working in 2005, or?
No, Cigar City opened in 2009.
Okay.
In 2005, I was working for a brew pub chain called Hops.
Okay.
So making beer. I started out in.
Did you learn on the floor there, or did you know about it before then? Or
yeah, I had brewed. I brewed a few homebrew batches in like the late 90s, and when I lived in Maine, I brewed a little bit of homebrew. Not really that much. I didn't really get that good. And when I moved to Tampa, there just wasn't as much beer on the shelves in like 99, 2000. Like,
when did the boom with like the artisanal, like the craft beer really kind of begin? Like,
well, the Brewers Guild was founded in 1996.
Okay.
The Florida Brewers Guild.
Okay.
So that was, it was happening, but like it wasn't like really exploding. Like you had to kind of know about it and find it. And the problem was most of that beer was not on the shelf at the local gas station.
You'd have to find it at like a kinky market or something.
Not even, no. Just the bottle laws. It was like all the microbrew beer. You could go there and
really?
You couldn't even get growlers. So you go there, you drink it, and you leave. Like if you want good beer at home, you gotta make it.
Sure.
By good, like American craft beer, there were good imports on the shelves.
Right.
But like if you wanted American craft beer, on your shelf at the house, you had to make it.
And then you went from Hops to where?
There was a little bit of a gap between Hops was closing down locations. So I was kind of mercenary brewer for hire. Yeah. For like I worked with like 1099 with like Orlando Brewing, and it's like working in the kitchen at Tampa Bay, and there was something I think I did some 1099 work with Cigar City.
Are there a lot of you out there, or is it a pretty select few of people who know what they're doing? Or
back then, there weren't. It wasn't really a very vibrant scene.
Okay.
It was a tight knit scene. Everybody knew each other.
Sure.
So everybody was like, like they all knew that I was talking about going back to construction really after Hops closed, and
right.
The Dobles at Tampa Bay Brewing Company and Wayne at Cigar City, they were like, no, dude, don't do that. Just,
now,
hang tight. And then I ended up at CCB.
I'm so naive in this world, so I apologize if the questions I ask are stupid. But are you coming up with new profiles for beers, or are you involved in that part of it all? Or do they say we want to come up with an IPA, or we want to come up with a blonde, or we want to come up with a lager, or we want to come up with whatever? Can you help us with kind of putting that together? How does that work?
At what point then, or do you mean now?
Well, I guess just in general, I'm asking that question. How does that work? With these brewing companies when they come up with their different things? What goes into that?
Oh, so I mean, at Hops, I was mostly brewing corporate recipes, but I did do some R&D with them. I brewed, a pale ale that my boss at the time said was the best pale ale that he's ever had in his life before he dumped it all while I was out of town at the World Brewing Academy.
Oh, wow.
They were closing that location. I was gone.
Oh my God. It's heartbreaking.
Whatever. Win some, lose some.
Yeah.
But, I made a stout there that got me kind of, it's probably why Joey wanted to hire me. It was like this stout that I made when I was at Hops.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Wayne kept telling me like how much he loved that particular beer. But so anyway, I mostly brewed their recipes. And the same thing when I went to Cigar City, I mostly brewed their recipes. Wayne told me when I was at CCB, or asked me if I wanted to, or told me that I should, or however it was worded, just fill a tank, do something you want to do.
Right.
So I did Tokabaga at that point. And then, I also did the moat water when I was at CCB.
I haven't tasted it, but I love the bottles. I love the concept.
It was fun, man. That project woke me up, like working with, Brian, those dudes at the skate park, and just doing like a non-traditional collaboration. It was just like punk rock. And I was kind of like, in a low spot personally a little bit. And this project kind of really just big time. Yeah. Big time. And just kind of like, just doing some punk rock shit. Like let's just do something like wacky. Like we're going to fill up liter bottles from the moat and dump that into the mash tun to make the moat water. Like,
how difficult is it? Like if you were a startup, is it super expensive, crazy expensive to get into to produce beer? Like,
it can be for sure.
Where does the expense come from? The hardware,
Yeah, I mean, equipment is not cheap.
Yeah.
Equipment is not cheap. The construction is not cheap. I've got like a kind of bootstrap, like kind of punk rock. I've got some equipment that I've collected. So like my startup that I'm working on is real like cheap, and I'm kind of banking on. I mean, comparatively, it's not a small amount of money, but compared to I could spend 6 times what I'm spending, and
you're doing this from home.
No, I'm for my startup is going to be Deviant Libation. I'm putting that on the same property with Tempest Projects and Crab Devil and the Peninsularium.
Oh, wow.
That's
going to be badass. All right. Yeah. Well, it's so funny because all these different people that I've interviewed, it's kind of the intersection between Devin and Brian and Elliot and all these other people. So, it's getting to the point where like, I can't remember who I met you through, but Devin, that thing sounds amazing. And the timing of it kind of worked out perfectly to where the construction of it, if they had opened up a year ago, it would have been a friggin' nightmare.
Oh no, yeah, we would be. I mean let's like funnel a bunch of people through shipping containers in a time when we're not supposed to be within 6 feet of each other. Like,
now, is this startup something that you're going to be doing in addition to your day job, or is that going to be the whole deal?
Yeah. So Commerce Brewing it's a production facility, contract brewery. We're brewing for other people, and so I was introduced to those guys. As people that would be potentially interested in investing in Deviant Libation. And they were like, also, we're opening a brewery too. Do you want to be our director of brewing operations? And I, at first I was like, I don't know, think about it, just kind of, they sold me on the idea. Basically those guys want, they want me to do other things. And the same as my counterpart, the general manager, Travis Kruger, is also involved in other projects, and like that's what they want. They're all involved in other businesses, and they want us to be involved in other things and kind of.
I think that's a good way to keep employees happy if you don't like hem them in and so you can't go do other stuff.
It's the right. It's they want us to
you don't want to be the Jason Newsted of beers. You want to be able to go out and do your Moon Unit or whatever the name of his side band was that got him kicked out of Metallica. So, and as far, what's the job title again at the other brewing company you were just talking about? The Commerce.
Commerce is I'm the director of brewing operations.
And where is that place located?
We're on Commerce Drive in Largo. Okay,
and so are you just kind of management overseeing people doing stuff, or are you boots on the ground? How does that work?
Right now, we're still kind of. we're still kind of growing. Like,
Right.
I mean, everything kind of slowed down with COVID. We've kept going.
Sure.
We've had things to do. But our tanks are just getting to a point to where they're going to start being all full all the time, which is kind of the goal. I mean, you've got tanks, you want them all full. So
you're only making money
now,
if they're putting out. So
So right now we've got a pretty bare bones staff. So I'm management and labor. And as things become more vibrant, most likely I'll be more administrative. I don't see myself being like ever I'm at a minimum going to probably always overlord the canning line until
someone who can do it better than you that you trust and you don't
or until until my skill set is needed elsewhere more
Sure.
than overlording the boat. But I have felt strongly for a long time that you want somebody who really cares a lot overlording the canning line. Where it's packaged is like it's the last chance to screw up. Like, so don't do that.
right.
Like, everybody's taking care all the way through. So like, let's just get it across the finish line.
Now, do you partake in the product yourself? I mean, are you a beer drinker or?
I love beer. So much alcohol in general. Like I love drugs. Drugs are great.
Right. So what are some of your favorite beers? Like does it change over time or do you have your go-to or?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, I love a good wit beer.
Yeah.
I'll probably always love a good wit beer, but lately, like light lagers, Helles, like a nice German Helles or a Dortmunder Export, is really appealing to me. Even like 2019 was going through planning phases for Deviant Libation. Like I was primarily planning on my brewery and not really doing much outside of that for most of the year, and not working in a brewery every day. I just didn't drink as much beer. Like
Sure.
even when I went out to the bars, I wasn't drinking as much, but it's like, I didn't really think about it. Like I guess I had counted up how much I was drinking at times. I was drinking probably, 200 or 300 gallons a year, for several years. And I'll probably get to a point to where I'm drinking a lot more than I am at current,
Right.
Which is not anywhere even in the vicinity of that. I mean, I have a couple beers a week usually,
Right.
lately. And it's just like, I mean, I love beer. I don't know.
With Deviant Libation, are you going to have several different flavors or are you going to just?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you've already got
Variety is the spice of life, man. The whole idea is like tiny brew house and like, it's not, I mean, I'll do some volume over at Commerce, but out of Nebraska Avenue, I'm going to pump out small batch after small batch after small batch. And one of the things that I'm really stoked about over there, I've been given a lot of opportunities, even all the way back to my first brewing job. Like they gave me opportunities to do something that I thought was good. And not everybody gets that shot, especially that early. Some people go long careers of doing what they're told before they get a chance to, be creative. And
Right.
so, I've got a couple guys that I want to hire they're on board, they're on the team. They're all very super talented people, and I really want to build their names beyond what they are.
Right.
I really want to. I mean, I'm still going to do things that I want to do, of course. Sometimes I'll brew them. Sometimes I'll hand a sheet to somebody. But I also want my guys, I want my team to thrive, to shine. Like it's kind of, I don't know. It's a big deal to me to kind of grow that team atmosphere and everybody shines kind of together. Right. Like
Sounds badass. I mean, you're brewing beer at a cool, art installation with an amazing band and looking to tour. Like I'm getting super jealous just thinking about it. Now, have you booked any shows at all for the band? Like,
no, we're just playing. Like we're writing songs.
Yeah.
We're,
I mean, I'm probably not showing it or communicating it well, but I was really impressed by the music. I thought it was pretty badass.
Oh, cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really right up my alley. And every time I have someone, like, I've had all sorts of different acts on, and I'm always, love whatever everybody brings in. But every now and again, like, someone brings in something and it's like spot on what I'm listening to. And I really dig it. My buddy, Greg, who plays in Wolfface, he just recently, he's the king of, like, just casually dropping, like, awesome, information without even much big. But he's like, you got to check out this band Next Season that I was in back in the early 2000s. It was like a Star Wars hardcore band from Clearwater. And it's been all I've been listening to for 2 weeks. It's been amazing. We just got it moved over from Bandcamp to Spotify, which just for a lot of people give me shit about Spotify. I know that they treat their artists like shit, but it's a lot easier for me to share music with people on Spotify than it is on Bandcamp, because you can't do the playlist or share single songs and all this. So
now I have a paid Spotify family account. It was like probably one of my favorite
best money I ever spent.
Presents. Yeah. I got my kids one of their holiday presents one year. Was like, look, I got a Spotify family plan. You guys have this now. Download this app. Yeah. Like, put this on your phone. Now you have all of the music. Like,
from that perspective, it's amazing. I realize it's really changed the business model for, professional musicians. And, I don't know what the answer to that is, but from an ability to say, hey, here, listen to this band, it's just very easy. My wife.
For me, it's like I've always been like I'm going to go to the show, like bands that I love. I'm going to support them every chance.
Buy their T-shirts, go to concerts, do all that.
T-shirts, CD. If I already have the CD or I don't even listen to CDs. I listen to vinyl. If they don't have any vinyl, or the only vinyl they have is like something that I already have, I'll buy a CD. I'll buy a T-shirt. Just buy whatever. Buy the merch. Like.
I agree. I agree 100%. So what are some of the bands you're listening to now? More of the same what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to a lot of thrash, a lot of hardcore, a lot of.
Did you hear the new Mr. Bungle?
I haven't listened to it all the way through, but I love what it like, dude. Seriously, like Scotty Ian and Dave Lombardo, and Dunn, like. Yes.
That Trace Bruins guy, I wasn't really aware of him, but he's an insane guitarist. Mm-hmm. Like, he was the least known person because Trevor Dunn had toured and done some stuff with the Melvins, who I like a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously Mike Patton, Scott Ian, and Dave Lombardo are like gods. But most of the lead stuff, pretty much all the lead stuff on that album is that Spruance guy, and it was insane. But no, it's so good. And, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, the lyrics, which is always kind of a Mike Patton thing. But they had a show that they aired on Halloween night called The Night They Came Home.
Yes.
And I rented that and watched it. It was so good. It was the closest to experiencing a concert that I've had this year. And it was like, I mean, it's not the thing, but it's as close to the thing as I'm going to get for a while. And I dug it big time.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm a big Mike Patton fan as far as like his creative output is concerned. Like I love
where he's at. Yeah.
Pretty much everything. Like pretty much I cannot think of a single, like every Mr. Bungle album is like markedly different. Sure. I love all of them.
Right.
Like the most recent one, does not sound anything like a Mr. Bungle album.
And it's first. It's their original demo.
Right. But I mean, it's like super like thrashy, and like I love thrash. Like it.
Me too.
Rules.
I saw Power Trip open for High on Fire, and I was listening to them, and I was like, these guys are like, they sound like all of the big four mixed in together, and I was like, what a throwback! What an amazing band! And then fucking guy just died, and I'm just like, well, that sucks. They were right at they had a couple albums out, but right at the beginning of their career, but they were just epic. And there's so many, Gate Creeper, Full of Hell, who are some of the other ones? All Pigs Must Die, a little bit more hardcore thrash, but it's really kind of, I feel like coming back in a big way. Or do you do many live shows? Do you go see many shows?
Yeah, when I can. That's the.
What are some of the big ones that you remember? What are some of the ones that have stood out in your?
Oh man, Daughters just friggin' ruled. Also, like Twin Temple surprised the shit out of me. Like it was so good. Like I didn't know how bad I needed some doo-wop in my life until I saw them. I'm like, that shit ruled.
Anybody else? This is. I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. This is the same thing I do with Elliot. Is I go back and listen to the show afterwards, and I write all these things down. So I go. So I'm actually milking you for suggestions.
I mean, Boris, Uniform. I mean, a lot of my favorite shows were shows that we got to play, and that's always a different like energy for me of like just getting into that headspace, and it just makes that show like being able to open for some band that I love like rules. Yeah, and it just like I already love that band, and so like I don't know, like opening up for Boris and like Uniform, it's like that was just like Boris fucking rules, right? And Uniform I had only heard a few times before, but that shit, like I'm listening to those guys, I'm like I'm just in this headspace, I'm in a really good mood. I'm like, dude, like I've never been on tour. I don't know that I'm ever gonna be on tour. I would love to, but I don't know how realistic that is. But I'm gonna share the stage with these guys right now. I'm gonna like try and warm this crowd up for these dudes, and like by the time they're playing, I'm in a really fucking good mood. Like I just got it all out. And now I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. What are you playing now? What type of guitar?
Oh, I'm not even playing guitar in my band, but I mean, I play like lately. I've been playing.
Oh, you're just straight doing vocals. You're not even playing at all. Oh, wow! I didn't realize that. Okay,
I've been playing like I've got this GNL ASAT special, so it's got the jumbo MFD pickup. It's like a Telecaster, but with these big fat single coils.
Sure,
I've been playing that a lot lately.
Very cool.
In my bedroom.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Deviant Libation, is that something that when you're up and running, people are going to be able to find online or order or do that sort of thing, or is it only going to be on the spot?
Yeah, well, we will. It's going to be primarily like on premise, but we're also I'm going to be applying for all of the alcohol licenses. So I'm planning on doing all these cool different blends and having a lot of interesting and unique beverages, the likes of which I've never really had an opportunity to make in the past is kind of what I want to do over there. And so a lot of it's going to be on premise facing and with I don't know, just variety, and doing all these cool things and one-offs, and then kind of let the market dictate, like, because I don't know, like everything that I do because I think it rules. Right. So that's just kind of my mindset, but that doesn't mean everybody else thinks it rules. Like, so, like if I like what I think is amazing might not be what, so like, I kind of balance it all out. Like I'll just keep putting it out. And like, whatever the market says, like, we want more of that. We want more, like, that's what gets made.
Well,
like, that's in bulk.
I'm super stoked for that whole deal. The planetarium, when he told me about it and everything, Peninsularium and everything that's going to be coming along with it. I'm so stoked for Ybor Heights, that whole area to grow even further and kind of, that scene to pick up. I wanted to thank you so much for making the drive over here today. It was awesome meeting you. I love your music. I'm hoping 2021 is the year of the Path of Increased Indifference and Deviant Libation, and just seeing everything take off for you. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks, Josh.
All right.